We are streaming again. Well, back, baby. Happy New Year to everybody. So I'm back for the new year. Looking forward to start off 2020 with 2020 ZBrush. I wish I could do Barbara Walters really well because I want to take advantage of the fact that, well, 2020, and I cannot do her well at all. Like, it's not even a thought process of me trying to make it happen. Maybe I watch a couple videos of her. I'll get it. So, you have to forgive me too. I'm still getting over some sickness here. So, at certain points, I might cough or so much. Or you can probably, if for those of you who've streamed and watched the stream, my voice is probably a little bit different right now because I've still got a little stuffiness going on. So, as usual, hey Chris, how you doing, my man? Welcome to the show. So I figure, 2020, everyone's got New Year's resolutions, which I never can keep or maintain or anything like that. So I thought, a kind of New Year's resolution kind of a thing. Not really, let's go to the old graveyard for 2020. And I wanted to revisit some sculpts maybe that I was excited about at one point, and I just didn't have the time to finish or get going with them. So I'm gonna revamp this old guy here, this old samurai piece, the mech guy that I was working on, which is nowhere near done. But I wanted to work on his head and maybe go show a little bit of where I wanted to go with detailing and some certain techniques that I like to use. So I consider like this phase right in here that I'm doing right now is kind of the stage two phase of my idea thinking out and working. So, I've got multiple sub tools here with folders. So what I mean by that is I have this version which is kind of a very rough, hashed out thought process, right? And then there's other pieces here, and I've started deleting pieces and done other things with the pieces. So this is why I was saying I'm in the stage where okay, I'm starting to make the stuff look a little cleaner, hard surface, like if you will, right? And then stage three is me now adding more detail. So I kind of just want to get into that with him in his head, right? So hold on. Excuse me. So I want to be able to start working on some pieces in here, right? So you can see where I'm going. Look, there's multiple versions of him now. He's super scary, right? So you can see there's multiple ideas happening through here, and I'm trying to take the ideas that I'm working on and then see what I come up with, right? So let's turn some of this stuff off because we don't need all this craziness happening in our lives right now. Okay, so I want to look at essence let's look at the head. So this is the beauty of me, like I'm using the folders. I like to be able to just kind of section off these pieces as you will and start focusing on certain parts. So this is, see, I got a reference folder right here. So this is kind of where I'm going with him. So this is what I mean by like, I'm figuring out, this is, I consider stage one, which for me is someone that's, good evening, Dark and Grim from the UK. Someone that's really gravitated a lot hard surface in the last, I'd say, several years. This is a process I really enjoy is figuring it out with like Dynamesh, getting kind of my proportions. I was trying to figure out, do I want cross sorting or do I want swords that stand up like this? So I'm going to go with the cross swords. Darn it, it just looks cooler. And silhouette wise, especially from the front, I like the look of that better. And obviously, the new beauty thing is we can do this now, right? And I can look at this, and instead of looking at the model here, I'm just turning and looking at this silhouette and see. I can just see that I prefer the swords like this, right? So if we even turn these swords off right here, I can get a better. I kind of enjoy like what's going on there a lot more. And then he does the old grab like this, kind of a thing. Or so I don't know. Just go with it, okay? So again, for me to change this, I just clicked on this and dragged actually, and then you guys can actually zoom in. Okay, on that is if you hold the shift key and then you can zoom, so it becomes really pixelated. So you don't have to actually have to go to the sliders to run this. So this is just a way, obviously, to look at something, which I find myself using quite a bit. You know, I look at that and making sure I'm getting my silhouettes right. So, but as usual, I'm working along here, or as anything, you know how I like to be for those that are tuning in that know me. I'm Captain Tangent, so I like to go on tangents. So if there's questions or something like that, I've got you. I've got you in sight on my chat here. Hi, Shaquille. Ah, Spicer's back. Look up here. Look up here. I don't even know if I can do it today. As you can see, my voice is already going down the bad omen hole here. And then, unfortunately, I won't be able to go as long today, obviously, as I normally do for my marathon. Number one, I don't think my voice is going to hold up for like 2 hours. And number three, unfortunately, I got some other meetings I have to get to. So, I just for, another thing for me, I'm going to, before I start diving into this, let's turn on some stuff again here. We got my torso, I got my arms. Let's throw some lower legs on in here. Right, and you can see I'm still just figuring things out, right? I'm not 100% on what I want to do with this guy. So I'm just going to do a little snapshotty here, right? Just so I have a version of him. So, well, let me turn my touch off. So, this is one thing I want to bring up because I'm doing this because I know I just saw this recently on ZBrush Central. So, the reason why I don't see anything really going on right now is because I'm using live booleans. Okay? So, if I want to use snapshot ability, okay, uh, with live booleans on, it's not going to be able to do it because that's multiple render items happening. And this is why it's not giving me this with live booleans turned on. Okay? So, I want to highlight this because I saw this just recently. Right? So, this is just showing me a snapshot of kind of what I'm doing. So, here's something fun that you guys could do if you wanted to. And it just gives you an idea of maybe where you're going to go with the sculpt. Something that I like to use, especially for referencing. But this is something where I'm going to start diving in and working on his head a little bit. Is in the draw palette. We got our floor grid. All right. And then in the snap, okay, you have certain things that you're going to be able to snap the mesh to. So, for example, I can have multiple floor grids here, right? So this is going to give us the ability to snap to the mesh, right? And so now this is looking at just the subtool that I have selected. And then I have snap to axis, which is now just looking at the world axis. And of course, snap to all looks at all subtools, okay? So what I kind of want to do here is I want to do a snapshot to grid. And what that does is actually takes the model that I'm working on and puts every angle on the grid, right? So if you notice when I turn to the back, I'm looking at the back, then that's the left side, then I turn, I'm looking at the right side, which at this point, there's no difference between the left and the right side right now. And I go from the top, I'm looking at the top, and the bottom, you're looking at the bottom. Yeah, you get it, all right? Nothing crazy going here. So I'm doing this because sometimes as me as a person maybe working, I like to, especially when I'm going to start looking at only a little section of him, I still have the ability to see, I can see what's going on, maybe with the details I'm going to start adding here, and I can still see the model overall within these images. So I'll use this sometimes as a way for me to keep an eye on what I'm working on. And then you have two sliders here. Okay, so one of them will make the mesh more transparent, okay? And one of them will make the images, right, more opaque or less opaque. So I want to kind of look at him full right now. And the images, I just need kind of a subtle look to them because I kind of just want to have them there for me. And then of course, this is easy for me to turn on and off, right? So in essence, I can turn this on and off any way you want. Okay, so that's just, and it's just using the floor. So I'm kind of using the floor now as like a, hey, as I'm going to start working on this head, there's going to be moments where I'm like, okay, well, let me just make sure, what I'm going to about to start designing starts working with the overall design that I've been going with. Okay, so it's a nice little way of working in here. So I'm just looking at a question right now. Aaron, you got the same cold as me? Lisa needs braces will always come. Sorry to hear. I think a lot of people have the colds. Okay. So let's see. Any advice for ZBrush Junior Designer? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do and what are you trying to dive into. For ZBrush, I say for anything, for any program, I had to teach myself a lot of programs too. You nibble off a little bit at a time, right? Just take a project and make that project first be simple. Especially when I'm trying to learn a piece of program, I try to stay very, very simple with it, right? And when I mean simple, like let's say, hey, I want to learn zmodeler and ZBrush, which I'm going to go into a little bit today. Let's just make a box that's a sci-fi case in essence that can open and close. Like something that simple, just to wrap your head around the feature and then the concept of the feature. And then take that, then, okay, now let me apply that to now say something like this. Let me make a bust of like a sci-fi head. And then you'll start nibbling away, and then you'll start learning certain features of that to understand how to use them. Okay? So there you go. That's one of the biggest advices I would say. Oh man, some Buckleys. You listen, I'm not kidding. I was just in Canada over the holidays. I bought 4 bottles of Buckleys, okay? 4. Okay, so for those that know, Buckley's is this disgusting cough syrup medicine. That's a Canadian medicine that I think right now is only sold in Canada, maybe in the UK. I don't know for the UK people here. It's gross looking and it's disgusting going down, but man, does it work. Does it ever work? I swear by it. So, okay, Neil, you're asking any way to get symmetry to automatically turn back on after using a gizmo option. Uh, i.e. remesh by union. So you're talking about when you go into your gears here, when you go into here, and you're using this remesh by union. Well, the thing with that, if say you're going to use, say, something like that, you're technically creating new topology, right? So then ZBrush is seeing new topology, new changes. So your symmetry options per se, right? So you have this on, right? And then I'm assuming this is what you're asking about. So if let's just say we did ZRemesh by ZRemesher, right? And then I say over here, what do I want polygon count wise? I'm going to say this, and then it's going to remesh it, right? So now I got to remesh. My symmetry's still on. So if there's something in particular that you're referring to exactly, if you can write up a little bit more, I'll come back to it though. So, Ian, you're asking about a Remesh Junior coming out. We do have a light version of ZBrush. There's a ZBrush Core version that doesn't have as much going on that we have here going on in the full version of ZBrush. And then, of course, we have a free software called Sculptress that you could also download and use for anybody that's trying to get in, or younger kids, generations trying to get into digital sculpting. That's a great way to get going. It's been a while, Night Shadow. Okay, so what I want to do with this guy is in essence, I'm looking at him and I'm going, you know what? I want to do a little bit more with him. Number one, I want to turn on dynamic subdiv, and I want to see what this is going to look like smooth. So I just hit the shortcut. Okay, I'm living, breathing, sleep on this because I like doing this with low polygonal items. Okay, so I'm looking at this and going, okay, I want to have a little bit more, some harsh lines. So I'm going to switch to zmodeler right now. I'm going to highlight this hedge right now. I'm going to switch to creasing, and I'm going to say complete edge because around this complete edge here, I kind of want to have a nice crisp there, and then have a also right here. Okay, and then what I want is that to stay a little bit rounded still. So you can see if I switch to this angle, there's still some roundness happening there, right? Or if you want to call it like a beveling, okay? So what I'm doing is in my creasing option, I'm telling it to hold creasing for 2 levels, okay? So in the dynamic subdiv, I'm telling it to divide 4 times. So that's what's giving me this nice roundness. So if I put this back up to 15, you can see the difference that I get, right? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't exist in real life in manufacturing. That perfect crisp, 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 crisp. So you shouldn't have it if you're doing something hard surface. So I would have something like this. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, no news right now on Peel UV. It's still in development for those that are asking for the Peel UV unwrapper. Okay, so I want to start maybe a little putting some more designing in here. And I want to put some more volume or height in there. Of course, I'm not in perspective mode, so I'm going to quickly do a masking like this, and then just go right to my gizmo and put a little more height in this. Now, the benefit to me being able to do this is I have low, 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 low polygonal height, right? So I have the ability to do something like this. So what I mean by that is if our scenario was a little different, where we had something, let's just throw a bunch of insert edge loops in here. Right? So we've got a bunch of edge loops happening in there right now, right? Now, if I was to do that same scenario, right, where I just do this on masking portion, and I switch to the gizmo, and I start pulling, that's great, but now see I've lost the consistency, right? And you can see this span here is a little bit wider than this one, and same thing down here, and then obviously this one's huge. Okay, so there's different tools that we're going to be able to use. So one feature that I really like, and I kind of want to highlight it for something like this, is because it's just fun. So let me go back to the default here. All right, there we go. And I'm going to go into my deformers, and I'm going to use extender. I'm a big fan of this this little deformer, little buddy, hey little buddy. Okay, so what this is going to do is allow me to deform. In essence, if I grab this, it's extending, right? So this can give you some, i.e., happy. Here, I'm going to turn off polyframe. Some happy mistakes here, or maybe this is not a mistake. Maybe this is what I'm looking for, right? So I can actually play with this and say, maybe do I want another level in there, right? Something like that. That's not what I want, okay? So what I want to do is I want to play in this area right here, right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this blue circle right here, and you can see what this is doing. This is moving where the actual the splitting or extending is going to happen, right? And I want to control that, and I want it to be in there, and it's symmetrical, so I can just say I want to add a little bit in there, right? And then maybe put it right in there. That's about something like that. Now, the other benefit to this, and I'm just going to turn polyframe on mode now because I don't want to keep flashing on me, is the one nice thing about this particular deformer is we have the other controllers. So the orange one's just, in essence, grabbing them, right? And then you got white ones, which is a sizing. So I could actually size up the top half. So if I want to do some kind of like maybe a little bit of a tapering now to it, which I don't want to do, but just an idea of why maybe instead of doing the gizmo way, this is another way. The other thing that I'm going to like is you have these cones out here. So you have a creasing or not creasing, right? So look at right in here, right? Here, we'll zoom in a little bit more in there. So you can see that edge right here and this edge right here not creased. So if I pull that up, now they are creased, okay? And then what also is very nice is this cone right here, I can inflate, right? So you have the ability to inflate out, and then I can even inflate in. And this is actually what my mind was going to, I was thinking about, maybe I want to put a little inflate in on this guy, and maybe not so much. So why I like doing this is discovering, right? I'm kind of figuring this out and seeing this, is this really where I want to go with the design? And how big of a gap do I really want to have now between like the top saucering part and then the part that's going to go into the neck and into the head, right? So this is giving me kind of a little bit of more freedom, and this is why I kind of like using this. I'm not just sitting there trying to just form and then trying to extrude and doing some other things. I'm playing with the deformer and seeing what kind of is going to work for me and saying, you know what, I'm kind of digging, I'm kind of liking that. All right, gives him a little more volume in the head. I think it's still a little bit too much for me. I'm going to go a little bit less, a little bit more like that. I'm kind of digging that. Okay, so now I've got this other little nice little gap that's going around in here, and I want to start having some fun now with this head, and I want to start manipulating and doing some other things to it. Let's see, it's hard for me to deciding when to crease and when to bevel. Well, let's take for advantage here. That's a great question, I think. So it's going to come down to your design thought process, really, as well. Okay. So if you take a look at just this piece, right, in here, I've got it creased. I know that because of what I've set my settings to, that I'm going to get a nice little, in essence, chamfering rounding right there on the edge. But do I want maybe something that's a little bit more, I want plane shifting there. And you got to be thinking about design-wise, and then when you go to do the rendering, how the light's going to be hitting this stuff as well. Maybe I want a nice subtle plane shift there. So if I'm looking for a nice subtle plane shift, that's then for me where I'll decide I'll use a bevel, right? Because now I've got, what I mean by plane shift, there's a shift here, here, and then it goes into there, right? And then now I would say, okay, let's go ahead and crease this still, increase this, and you take a look at that, and you can see that little ridge is going to make a difference. When I pull back, it's not dominating, but when it comes down to then we start rendering, there's an extra plane there, and that's going to make a difference when you go do your lighting effects and doing some other things, right? So it really starts coming down to some design element that you want to put into this. And you got to be thinking about this also in the grand scheme of things, the end result. I'm just looking to make some cool samurai mech guy that I want to make a final illustration with. That's my ultimate goal here. Okay. Okay. So I'm all right with that. I kind of like it. In fact, let's put one on the bottom too. I'm gonna go bigger on the bottom. I think I'm gonna go more, yeah, more like that, and then we'll crease that. And I want that edge and that edge, and then let's throw in my dynamic so that's just got a bigger lip on the bottom. Start creating a little asymmetry in this so it's not also so robotic perfectly looking as well here, okay, which is important. Okay, so I'm just looking at another question. Hey, the Z-sphere and the topology brush can be used some polishing up for speed. Why not include all topology features in zmodeler when proper edge extrusion feature and current? The Z-sphere retopology stuff, you got to think that was coded, I don't even know, 16, 17 years ago, right? So, and it's a very different base structure that's going on with the Z-sphere. It's not easy to just take necessarily that code and just throw it in the brush. There are base elements going on there. So is there a difference between key shot for ZBrush for material libraries in the full version compared to the yeah, the only difference is with the key shot for ZBrush, you need the bridge, right, in order to use that one. And with the bridge, Joseph Drust and mostly Joseph Drust and myself, we made a couple materials. We made Joseph made a bunch of made a bunch of plates, and then we also made a bunch of environment lighting pieces. So you get that with the bridge. Other than that, there's no difference between the Keyshot for ZBrush material libraries and the full version. Um, because it's using the same key shot. It's just the licensing is what restrictions come into play. Okay, so what I want to do is start having some fun here. So I've got a folder here. Okay, I'm going to make this a start group within the folder for the head, and I'm going to make right now the neck piece that I just have sitting there. This is just a piece just to make sure I'm understanding where I want to put a neck and maybe go into the shoulders. I don't even think this is what I'm going to end up with. It's just something I started doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert, and I'm going to grab anything. I really don't care what it is. It's not relevant, okay? So I want to be able to resize this down. So I'm going to switch to my gizmo. And then I'm just going to move it up. It's not even necessary. I just want to know that it's sitting inside the head. I just have it sitting here, right? So if I turn on transparency, you can see it's sitting there. It's really not relevant what this piece is going to be or what this mesh is, okay? And what I want to do is turn my live booleans back on. And I want to tell ZBrush, I want to turn this into a subtractive. So I have my boolean options here, and I've got my subtractive on. So I've turned on my live booleans here in the top, and then I've got subtractive on now here, right? We've got some subtractive going on. So I want to start working at, let's start adding some fun elements to this guy. So I'm going to switch to IMM Boolean. And this brush, and then this trick I'm about to show you changed things for me and how I'm working with live booleans and insert mesh brushes. It's amazing. So, I can grab something like this. Excuse me. I can be in symmetry mode and start drawing it out. And you can see I'm actually drawing out on the cube, but it's affecting my head in essence. Right? And then the beauty of this, now that I'm in gizmo mode, I tap, right? And I can literally swap out and start saying, do I want to put some kind of little maybe slice element in the head? So this is kind of like happy mistake kind of things happening. Like, what is this really going to look like, right? And I can even go to crazy, insane parts and do stuff like this, right? Maybe I want something like that in the back, more to the top, and do something like that. Do I want, now it's just looking funny. It's just looking like a cartoony character with big heads, right? And then you see I can just cycle through things and look at what's being created. I can rotate it, right? Move it around, move it through here, turn on dynamic from this so I can see what that's going to look like kind of in a soft look here, right? So this is super powerful for me. Like, it's way cool, the things that I'm going to be able to do, right? So I want to kind of show how we can go about making these ourselves as well, right? Because I want to start making some of my own here, okay? So I'm just going to make a simple cylinder to start. Okay, I'm just going to grab a cylinder here. I'm going to turn on my polyframe so you can see what's going on. I'm going to go to my initialize. I'm going to say I don't want any divisions at all here, okay? I'm going to change, I want an align along the Z. Let's change the height of that a little bit. We'll make that a polymesh. Then I'm going to switch to my handy dandy zmodeler brush here. And let's start going ahead and making a nice little cool piece. So I'm going to put a bevel. Let's do an insert here. I only want a single insert. And do something like that. I'm going to do another one there. I'm going to hold the Alt key and just paint a temporary polygroup. Okay, and I'm in QMesh mode now in that single polygon and pushing this in. So again, I just held the Alt key and then just went along, and that gives me a temporary polygroup. So anything that's white, okay, it's going to be affected. So if I click on one face, I know they're all going to move in essence, right? So I just want to start building something here that I want to use as a cool little accent piece on this head that I'm creating. So just adding some simple elements in here, right? And figuring out what I want to do and just having some fun really with this. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and do some creasing now. So I'm going to do the old crease by Paul Gaboury, right? So which is the old crease by polygroups. I'm going to throw it on dynamic now by hitting the D key so I can see what that's going to look like smoothed. Okay, and you can see down here, I don't like the looks of that. So I'm just going to hit the regular crease, and it's looking at this slider, which is a tolerance. So it's looking at anything that's 45 degrees or higher gets crease. So that's why this edge got crease, even though it's not the same. I mean, even though it's the same polygroup, right? So this crease PG option is creasing based upon where the color changes are happening, right? This crease button is looking at the tolerance and then seeing degrees of changes and creasing based upon those, okay? So Neil, no, if the remesh by unit is turning off symmetry when it's done, no, there's nothing you can do to keep it on when it's done. So I'm kind of just coming up with some kind of little design element, and then I'm going to put another edge loop in here. Yeah, I want to do a little something like this. Yeah, that looks good. Let's do a temporary painting in here. All right, and I want to pull this one. I want to pull out. You know what? Well, first of all, I don't want to have my poly loop. And again, I'm hovering over a face and hitting spacebar. I don't know why I just had an accent there for a minute. Spacebar. Okay, and then doing single polygon, and then doing something like this. I'm changing my polygroups on the fly by tapping the Alt key, of course. And I added this extra edge loop because I wanted to use QMesh and now polyloop it, and I wanted to pull out here and put a little, just have a little bit of an angle happening in there. I don't like that angle, so I'm going to make that angle be a little bigger. Yeah, yeah. And then that way when I do this, I'm getting something like that. I want to just have some kind of little nub thing going on in there, okay? And for the sake of looking at the topology, just there's not a lot there. And this, looking at the smoothness, this is the beauty of a dynamic subdiv that I've turned on here by again hitting the D key. Okay, so I'm going to add another just edge loop in here. So I'm going to insert a single edge loop and just watch that change a little bit. I want to make that a little bit tighter in there. Something more like that. That's more what I was looking for. Okay. And now I want to go, okay, the creasing, I know I'm not going to keep my creasing like this on the final result. So let me take a look first at what this is going to look like. If I drop my creasing to 2, and if I was to turn up my smoothing, what does that start to look like? Okay. So this is because this is what it's going to look like when I go and put it on my surface, right? And I want to make sure, how does that look, right? So going back to some of the questions, when to bevel, when not to bevel. Like, so if you look at this right here, do I want just that nice rounding transition there? Do I want this nice rounding transition there, right? And you can see those are creased, okay? But maybe there's too much roundness there. So this is just an simple add an edge loop, right, through here, and then you would solve that problem and it wouldn't be so rounded, okay? However, I could also just come in here, switch to a bevel, right, and then just bevel these, and then I can watch it and go, yeah, I like that, and I like that, right? And all I was doing now is, in essence, adding edge loops. They're not creased now, but there's now just extra edge loops there, right? So you see I went from that edge looping to that edge looping, right? And so that just made a little bit of change. So I like where I'm going with this, okay? I like what I'm doing here. My goal is I'm trying to make a little piece that I want to go start using on my model, okay? So what I want to do now is say, okay, looking at this, I want to grab this now and start doing some items with it, okay? I want to start doing something to it. And I want to turn it into a brush because I want to go use it back on this model, right? That's where I'm looking to go to use that, all right? So coming back to this, I'm going to say, all right, I want to pick this up, brush, create insert mesh brush, new, and now I've got this. It's obviously taking on the name of my subtool, which is a crazy name, right? So you obviously, if you change the name, I'm just going to, for the sake of test one, we're going to call this test one. Okay, so now that I have it called test one, if I was to do that same process, brush, create insert, and let's just say new again, you can see it takes on the name test one. So how this is facing the camera becomes important. I'm sure there's many people here that have used insert mesh brushes before. So what I've given myself is the ability to do this. Okay, so going back to this guy, I can come back into here and add here. Right? So it looks like nothing's happening. But if I turn on my polyframe, you can see that it drew it out. The thing here is we're on a subtool that's got subtractive on. Okay, by default, the brush is going to be looking at the surface and then making sure that when it draws out, it's staying right on the surface. I don't want that, number one. Number one, I want this to have a depth capability. And that's just fun to say, depth. So this embed right here in your brush palette, I'm going to change that to 0. Okay? And what's going to happen is it's now, you can see embedding in. Okay? And then this is now what it's doing. So this is the beauty of this system. This is what I like this. This is kind of like a non-destructive way of working. Because if I don't like what this is looking like, it's super easy to just delete it. I don't need to have it, right? So the problem we have here is it's just making a circle hole, right? And that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for to have this piece. So of course, if you hold the Alt key, it's going to flip it, and now you got something like this going on, right? Which is cool. I have this ability now to look at this and see what this is doing and maybe readjusting this and saying, you know, I want this to sit up a little bit higher. Let's have this sit in more, right? And then maybe even have a little bit of a rotation element to it because maybe I don't want the whole round piece. Maybe I just want something like that. And, you know, I don't even like how much of that is showing. You know, and I'm sitting there just watching and seeing the changes that I'm starting to make on the fly. Now, I did is held the Alt key, right? So obviously that is just flipping this. It's like flipping it the opposite way, right? My original design, okay, if we think about this, if we get close to this, my original design, this part in here is supposed to be pushing out of the surface, right? This ring through here is supposed to be pushing in the surface, right? So this is, in essence, doing the opposite, which makes sense because you're holding the Alt key, okay? That's not really what I want to do. This is nice that I have this ability, okay? But what I want to do is something a little different, okay? So I'm going to go back to this test one, boop, boop, okay? And what I'm going to do is turn on my polyframe so you guys can see what's going to happen here. And I'm going to mask everything but this back portion right here. Okay, so that's the only thing I'm going to keep intact. And then I'm just going to switch to the gizmo, right? And then I'm just going to push this along enough so the height is past the original piece. Okay, so let me undo. What did this do? Right? So again, I'm just using the mask, holding control, and actually, I'm no longer having my finger on the keyboards. Now holding the Alt key, I'm undoing, right? And everything else is masked, but what was in that box. Okay? Sorry, I need to take a drink. Okay, so all these edges over here and that center point are free to move. So I'm moving them past this, right? So now if you look at this, if I come down to my display properties, and if I hit this flip button, I'm flipping the normals, right? So what we're doing now is kind of, I'm looking now in the inside, and you got to do this, of what I was making. The inside Okay, and this is kind of where I'm trying to go with this. Okay, and now what I want to do is use this and add it maybe to this insert. So I'm going to put a little more, I want a little more height in this, just a little bit more like that. Yeah, a little something more like that. I'm going to turn on that floor grid, and I'm going to look at this piece and say, you know what, this is sitting somewhere in the world. I'm going to unit it so it's sitting in the dead center of the world. And I'm going to say, let's take it off a little bit more centered like this. Okay, and I'm made it the wrong way. So I'm going to turn it around 180 degrees. Beep, 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 beep. My hand is not cooperating with me today. Okay, so I have this. So this is looking at the front of it, right? And what I want to tell ZBrush to do is I want this item to also be on the other side, right? So I'm going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and right here in Mirror and Welding, I'm going to turn off this X option here. X marks the spat, and I'm going to turn on Z, right? Because I'm looking this way at it, it's Z. Okay, so then I'm going to hit Mirror and Weld. I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead and do it. And now you can see I got on both sides going on here. Okay, the orange dots, I see that Sandman gotcha. Those are the vertex points. Right? Because right now I'm looking at a smooth version of this, technically, right? So when I turn on dynamic subdiv, hit the old D key, as in David, as in dynamite. Oh man, I can't do the normal voicing stuff. It's showing me the vertex point's actually sitting here in space. It's not actually here. It's sitting there. So that's what that is. You know, and then looking at this, I don't like what's going on here. So I'm going to add another. I don't like that sharpness that's happening here either. So I'm going to insert another edge loop right here. And then I'm going to delete that one there. And I'm going to slide this a little bit down like that. Yeah, I'm digging that more. That's better. And then, you know what? I want to actually have a creased edging there as well. And then we'll do the old mirror and weld to take care of the other side. And now I got it on both sides. So then now that's what it's going to look like. I want that little lip in there. I want to keep that little lip going on in there. Hi, Farzai. How are you doing? So you're asking why only on this position the orange dots? That's so you're only going to see those if you have polyframe. So it's multiple things. Number one, polyframe has to be on, which is this button right here. Shift F, right? Dynamic also has to be on for dynamic subdivs. And then how close the mesh is to the camera. So as you get closer, you'll see they'll just start appearing. Right? Because we did this because as a user, if I'm trying to move this vertex point, I want to see it. If I'm moving up close, I really want to get precise with it. And I want to make sure I'm clicking at exactly where it's sitting in the space so I can start clicking on it and then moving it. Right? So that's what it's doing. Hey, Astro Stole Mars, welcome. Yes, exactly. They're simulating where they're showing where they are actually in space, where dynamic subdiv is giving you guys a preview of right now 4 subdivision levels. So I know what this is going to look like if I divided 4 times. Okay? So, back to what we were doing. I'm going to say brush. I'm going to say, okay, let's grab this one again. That's test 1. Let's rename this test 2. Beep, beep. Okay, and then I'm going to say, looking at it this way, extreme close-up. Okay, I'm going to say brush, create insert, and this time I'm going to say append it. Because what I want to do is create a multiple insert mesh ability. Okay, so I'm going to append that, and it's going to give me a note. Hey, hey, hey. If you want to see other ones, hit the M key. Okay, that's a way to look at your insert mesh brushes, but now we have the IMM viewer that's along the top of your UI, which doesn't have to be along the top UI. It can be on the right side, it can be on the left side, it can be on the bottom. Okay, and I say boom. So now we have a test one, which if you remember is the original one with like nothing on the back. It's just a flat bottom. So it's going to give me the ability to use that one to just draw something out. I could hold the Alt key and do the, the inside out face. And now I made a whole nother version. Okay, and because I brought it up, in your interface, okay, IMM viewer, there's a placement slider here where you can actually move it. So depending, you're right-handed, left-handed, or if you prefer things in a different location, you can actually use this slider. So you can see my IMM viewer is on the left side right now. But you might be someone that wants it on the bottom, or maybe you just prefer it there on the right side because you're going that direction more. I'm usually the defaulty guy. I keep it along the top. Yes, David Rose. Yes, absolutely. These are all recorded. They'll be available on our Twitch TV channel and our YouTube channel as well when you're done. Facebook doesn't store that stuff because I see you're on Facebook right now. So, but if you go to our YouTube channel or right now Twitch, and I'm streaming to those right now. So even if you want to leave your Facebook right now and go to zbrushlive.com or our YouTube and stuff, you'll see all that stuff there. Okay, so coming back, let's get back to this guy. So again, we've got a second subtool selected. It's an itty bitty living space, like Aladdin. Itty bitty living space. Okay, there's a cube sitting in here, right? And I've marked that as a subtractive with our live booleans on. And now I want to draw this out, and then this is what I get. Whee, right? And it looks like nothing is happening. Well, if you guys remember, something's happening. It's just not sitting where I want it to be sitting, right? And here you can now see the difference between the two, okay? So this is now the new one where I did that flipping. Okay, now if I go grab this one and I hold the Alt key, right? That's a big difference. But let's think about this. I literally, from one mesh, am making different results here, right? So this is the beauty. This is why we have IMM brushes. Okay, so do I want something more like this where it's kind of indenting inward, right? And then having some pushing out with the indentation in? Or do I want something more like this where it's pushing in and then it's pushing now out differently, right? So in essence, the outs are now the ins are now the outs. Very confusing to say, okay? But because I'm storing this in the brush, I have both options there at any time I want. So what I want to do right now is I want to set the distance for this new one, okay? Because when I draw this out, it's just sitting, on the surface. This new one here, it's just sitting on the surface. So it's not taking advantage of this technique I'm trying to use right now. So I'm going to say, you know what, let's go about this. Let's do this a little differently, all right? So let's go into the brush. Let's take our depth and at least make it 0. In fact, I'm pretty confident. Let's make it a negative 33. So it was a positive 33, and I'm just flipping the script. Or they say in usual suspects, I flip you for it. I flip you for it. Give me the keys. I flip you for it. Okay? So now when I draw out, okay, and I can start seeing results. So you can see that's going too deep right now. So negative 33 was not the way to go here. Hey, Thomas, Happy New Year. So I'm going to undo that and say, okay, let's go to 0. And let's see if I get what I want there. Yes. Yes. That's what I'm looking for, right? So 0 is pretty good. Now, if I go, it's still pushing a little too much in, then that's just a depth change, right? Then maybe let's add it. Let's put 10 on this. Yeah, see, it's not as deep. It's a little more shallow. Let's keep going. Let's just keep experimenting here and getting one that I want. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that's the one I'm looking for right there. So it's got just a subtle depth happening in there, which I'm a fan of. And now I've got something like that going on in here, right? So I want to now embrace this workflow, okay? So you guys are getting the foundation here of what I'm starting to do. This is just going to be some kind of nice little accenting piece, okay, that's going on. Okay, hold on. I'm reading Takavash's question. Hold on. I just mentioned something. Talk amongst yourselves. Coffee talk. Coffee talk. Neither here nor there. Hold on. I'm trying to gather what Takavash is saying. So, if you can't see his question, he's saying, I just might find another way to reverse the effect a little faster, but I'm not sure, and that's why I'm writing it here to getting the confirmation from me, Paul. The idea is using live boolean. So I'm assuming you had a question later on that I missed. So what's your question exactly? What part were you talking about, Tagavash? So I can see where we're going. Okay, so why he or she is writing that up. Now, let's embrace this idea a little bit more. I want to start having some fun with this, okay? I want to go a little step further. And in fact, I want to start maybe even using the head itself as ways to start looking at stuff. So, number one, along here, I want to start doing a little something else. Let's switch here. I'm going to do solo out, and let's add some element pieces through here. So I'm going to say brush zmodeler, and I'm going to hover over an edge, hold my space bar, and I'm going to switch to add the curve. And I'm going to add, let's say, okay, I've got the ability here to work in symmetry. So I'm going to look at my floor again. This is the symmetry side that's important to me, this red line. So I'm really only going to care about this one side. And I'm going to say, let's add a curve there. Okay, let's there. Let's keep just adding a couple curves here. I'm going to add just a little bit of element maybe up in here, just to be different. Okay, and then I'm going to hover over this, and you see it says delete curve. Okay, I'm going to space bar that, and I'm going to switch it to bevel. Right, and then now I'm just going to click on that and add a bevel there. Okay, and so what I'm doing is adding like a little element there. And I'm going to say, okay, let's now switch to QMesh. I'm going to say polygroup all, and I'm just going to push this in a little bit. So now I created something that looks like that, right? So it's got this little notch right there, right? And what I'm going to do is I know I want to use creasing, okay? So I'm just going to pick these two polygroups. And I did that by this vertex point right here that I'm hovering over right now, share two polygroups. Okay? So I'm going to click on this, right? And I'm going to say, just looking at this, let's crease by polygroups. And now I have that. And I'm going to throw in even a crease here. So I'm going to add a crease there. And over here, I'm going to add a crease there. Turn on smoothing. And then this is what you start to get, right? So I'm just adding a little bit, maybe a different look here and seeing if this is something that I like to this. It's just kind of a break in that perfect cylindrical thing that's going on through here, right? Or maybe I don't want to even do the indent. Maybe I just want that. What does that look like, right? And then I'm going to do crease by that, and then see now it's just got that little subtle change and shift in plane there, right? And I'm going to go ahead and crease that there, and I'm going to crease that one down here as well, right? And then now so you can see what's creased, okay? And I kind of like that. I kind of like that subtle shift and change, so I'm just going to mirror weld that over so I got it on both sides, right? So it's something small, it's minor. Okay, so I'm saying I'm using the head. I'm going to duplicate this, okay? And I'm now going to just look at the duplicated version and say, okay, what I want to do now is I kind of want to use the head to start creating elements and design elements to this, maybe kind of like scribe linings, okay? And someone's asking, you don't get what I'm making? So this is what I'm making. I'm making like a mech sci-fi guy is what I'm doing right now. So I'm working on his head and adding some details and showing the techniques that I would use to add some detailing elements to this. Okay? So I'm going to take this and let's go and say, let's go down here and let's apply our dynamic subdivs. Okay, so now this particular head is sitting at 2.7 million polygons. I don't need that much. I don't even need that much. That's probably 42,000 is probably enough. Oh yeah, 42,000 is enough. Okay, and what I want to do, since I duplicated the head, I'm going to use this now in a way to come up with a little bit of design element. So I'm going to switch to what I like to use is my slicing. Okay, so I'm going to switch on my slice curve, which is going to allow me to kind of slice across and do things like that, right? So I'm creating an element, different element there, piece there. Okay, so I can double tap to make it be a sharp, right? Maybe I would prefer that to be kind of like a sharp angle. And then this is what I love, that it's getting a polygroup. I can visually see what I'm getting. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry, I had to cough. I know you guys don't want to hear that in your ear. I'm loud enough usually as it is. So I want to take this one more step further. I want to go another level, okay? And what I want to do is I want to have not only one, I want to have 2 lines, right? I want 2 there. Okay, I want something like this going on, right? And then I can look at this and go, all right, and then I can mirror and weld that over, and now I got that happening. So this is going to be the kind of little design element that I want to start putting in to this guy. And then I'm going to say, you know what? I want to come across here, and I want a nice cut there as well. All right, and let's do another one. So I want to come across here and do a cut there as well. So what I have going on is I'm using my draw size to create the double slicing that's now happening in this guy. Okay, so we're creating one slice and another slice. Okay, so what I'm using again is I'm using the slice curve. So I'm holding down Control Shift and I'm selecting the slice curve. You can see it now. And then I've turned on something special to tell it I want 2 lines there, right? I want 2 things there going on. Okay? And what that is I've turned on B radius. Yes, it's so powerful. I love it. Right? So I'm holding down Control and Space Bar, and that gives me the B radius. Okay? So which in essence is down here in your clipping. Right? So that's where it is. Okay, that's where it's living. Right? And so now what I want to do is I want to take the elements of this, right? And I might want to do some other things like this. It might be, you know what, let's take only now this portion, and this portion, because this is all I care about using is this part right here. Okay? And I'm going to say, all right, let's take this. In fact, I see a little triangle that I don't want right here. I don't want that. Okay, and obviously I didn't have symmetry on. Bad, Paul. And I'll make this a new polygroup so just visually you can see what's going on in here. And I want to use this now as a way to be used on the other head. Okay? So there's multiple ways I can go about doing this. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this off because this is just the way I want to do it today. And then now I have just this. I'm going to say, okay, we've got symmetrical pieces here, right? I'm going to turn on my local, so I'm locally looking at this. And then let's go ahead and just Z-remesh this. So I'll stay with the default settings and remesh that and just get clean geometry. Actually, you know, it's pretty dense. I don't think I even need to go that crazy. Let's cut this in down. Let's cut it to at least maybe 2,000. Even that's a lot. Oh, it's doing a great job of holding it. Let's get in hundreds then. Let's go to 500. Yeah, there we go. That's good enough for me. Okay. And so what I want to do now is take this, right? and do multiple things with this, right? So I can then say, all right, this is just a flat plane. How do I want to add some thickness to this in essence? Okay? And I want to add some thickness to this, but what I want to use is panel loops. So when you click panel loops, this is what we're going to get. You're going to get something like this, right? That's creating panels that are now doing that. Okay, so here's where I'm going with this, people. So you got this where it could be a raised item now on my guy, on my mech, or we turn this into a subtractive and it's now just a slight little part that's now just cutting into my surface, right? And having now this cut lines coming through here, i.e. Scribe lines, okay? And I kind of want to extend this, so I'm liking this. And by me doing panel loops, I'm instantly getting a bevel, right? So I'm getting a bevel happening right out the gate through here, right? And that's kind of maybe what I'm looking for. However, I could be, you know what? I don't like that. Let's go a little thicker, right? Let's go a little thicker. So I'm going to say, let's add a little bit of thickness. Let's go 0.05. Let's see what that does for me. Oh, Lord. That's a bit excessive. I don't think I need to go that thick. That's crazy for this guy. 0.02. And let's panel that. Yeah, that's better. Okay, and then now, because this is a subtractive, I can cut into the surface and watch things change. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit of that. Yeah. Nice little beveling. Turn on dynamic so I can see what that's going to look like. And this is why I love this, right? It's opening up a lot of things for me here. Okay, now another thing that I could have just done right here, instead of using, say, the paneling, right? I could have just come in here, gone to my zmodeler, right? And in QMesh, say all polygons, right? And I can pull up the polygons. So this is now sitting on the surface. So if we look at just this, okay, this is all I did is I added thickness. Okay, and then down here, I want to say polygroup all and add some that, and then this is automatically, I know, is cutting into the surface, right? Because maybe I want to go something like that. And these ends here, I don't like what's happening here on the ends. So I'm just going to take these and then just say, you know what? Let's stick with zmodeler. I'm going to say, let's go to transpose. Click on those, and you can see what I get now, the gizmo. And I'm just going to extrude that end off, right? Because then that is going to cut all the way through, because that's what I want. I want something more like that. That's what I'm looking for, right? And then the back side, I'm going to do the same thing here. Again, I'm holding the Alt key, painting a temporary. Then I'm tapping, and because I switched to transpose, I can add an extrusion off the back end now, and then do that, and there you go, right? Now I've got these nice scribe lines, and the key thing here is I'm using, right, the existing topology without ruining my actual mesh, beginning mesh that was there, right? So this is where I start going with this, and I start thinking about what is sorry, what is it that I want to create, and what is it that I want to make here, right? Now, what I might want to do is something even a little more extreme and a little more fun here, right? So this is where approach where I duplicated the head, made it existing, and then started cutting into the surface, right? So I might want to even go a different route, which I really like. So taking all these things that I've been talking about, and let's combine them now into like one way of doing this in a different way, okay? That makes no sense at all. Just stick with me. Thanks, Betsy. Best E. Thanks for the shout out. So what I'm going to do is something where we made an insert mesh brush, right, to do this little circular part. This part, I duplicated the head and then kind of sliced on it and then did some extruding or did some panel looping, whatever way I want to go about this, okay? There's another way we can do this and have some fun. Excuse me. Sorry. So let's go ahead and let's go back to this guy, okay? And let's turn this into a mesh. Beep, 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 beep. Make polymesh. And I'm going to start with a cube now instead. Okay, so let's make this a lot bigger. And now let's get rid of the spans of topology. All right. So I just went into my gizmo, hit the WK, and then I hit this little gear, and then I hit cube. And because I had the gizmo on and the mesh that I had selected wasn't masked off, ZBrush is actually swapping the meshes for me, which is super handy. Okay, so I want to start building something. So I want to start building my own scribe lining ability here. So let's switch back to zmodeler. And let's insert here. Let's do a multiple insert across here. And let's delete some edges by holding the Alt key. And now I'm going to Q-mesh this. And I only want to Q-mesh a single polygon. Let's Q-mesh that down. Change the polygroups just for the sake of being in the nature of things. Then I want something like that. Okay, that looks good to me. So I want that. And then what do I want to have happen up on the top? Let's think about this. So maybe I want this to come out a little bit. But you know what? I don't want that. I just want something like this happening. Yeah. Let's say something like that. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to make it all one polygroup by Control W. All right? And then I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to do a multiple insert across this way. Okay, so that now there's a middle polygroup, and then these two ends, okay, have a polygroup when they're the same. So I'm going to click on that polygroup, and I'm going to go down here to the polygroups and say auto group. And so what that does is, because those were two separate shells, they weren't connected at that time, they each get their own polygroups. Okay? So I'm going to look at this now. Okay, well, what does this look like when I do this? Okay, I'm not a fan of that. First of all, I'm not a fan of these edge loops. I want them to be a little bit more there. Okay, and I'm going to start throwing some creasing at this now. So let's just start with the 45-degree angles. Yeah, okay, I wanted that. That's exactly what I wanted. But I also want these here to be creased. I want that to be creased as well. Right? And then, of course, I'm not going to be, when it's all said and done, what is it going to look like when it's divided? Okay, it's going to look like something like that. Okay, I'm good with that. I like the way that's looking. Okay, I'm going to now look from the top. Okay, and you're going to get what I mean by the top here in a second. And I'm going to say create insert mesh brush again. So I hit the B key, create insert mesh brush, and I say new. So it's the same thing, right? We just created this, woo, this weird wacky doodle shape. Okay? So now what I want to do is say, all right, that's an insert mesh brush, but in the stroke palette, in the curve, I want to turn on curve mode. And I want this to be put along a curve. Right? So now the difference is when we go to draw out, right, this is what I'm getting. And so you can see what's being repeated in the middle, and then there's a beginning and an end. So the beginning and the end are the same, and the middle's the same, and it's just being repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And, excuse me, so what I want to do is tell ZBrush, okay, when you're messing along the curve here, I want to make sure that there's certain things happening. So you can see it's just wide open gaping holes here, right? So I'm going to come over here to the brush palette, And the reason why I come into the brush palette, the thing you have to understand right now, the stroke is how I'm applying something to the surface, right? The brush is the thing that is being applied. So in this case, the thing that's being applied is this little crazy looking geometrical thing that I made. That's the actual brush, right? So in the modifiers, you'll see that little shape right there with the name, which of course I didn't change the name, okay? And right up below that, you'll see a thing that says weld points. So I'm going to turn that on, and then of course I got this. And now this is what I'm looking for, right? A nice, even distributed stroke, okay? So now, I got now this brush that I can draw out this curve, okay? So some of you probably know where I'm going with this. Some of you are like, I don't know where you're going with this. Let's go now back to this head. Okay, so let's do another duplicate again. Beep, beep. Okay, and let's look at just this version again. All right, and then I'm going to go back down to dynamic. Okay, so we know we don't need this many. I'm going to apply, and we don't even need that many. Okay, so we got something like this. Now, let's do a little something like, okay, I had a little boom, boom slice going in here. So let's go back to that slice and say, all right, I wanted to have a slice that did this and then did that. Okay. And again, we're going to do mirror and weld. Okay. So you got to have everything visible to do a mirror and weld. Okay. So I know I just want to use this top portion. So I'm just going to split it off. Okay, because I know I'm just, in essence, guys, I'm just trying to use this as kind of like the base to start building details on that's going to go on the head that I'm making, right? Then I'm going to, you know what, for the sake of argument, I'm going to assign a hotkey to my mirror and weld. I'm just going to assign the 4 key. 4! Okay, and then I'm going to say, okay, I want to slice there. I want to slice there. Okay, that looks good. I want to put, let's put a little panel here. So I'm going to put a little panel that kind of comes like this, comes up like that, and comes across, and comes down like that. Just something maybe a little bit like that. Okay, and then of course, Control W makes a new polygroup, but for this sake, I'm going to do that. So it creates a slice as well based upon that polygroup. Okay, and what I've done there is created a shortcut. All right, and that shortcut is Control Shift E. And what that does is look at a mask, uses that mask as like a border, slices it, and then creates a new polygroup. So it's the same thing as right here in the edge loop in the tool geometry. You can see that button right there. And you can see when I hover over it what the mask is. Okay? Right, so now that I have this, okay, I'm going to say Control Shift E. Okay, I got a little panel there. And I'm kind of just using the polygrouping as a visual cue, right, to see where things are. You know what? I'm going to clean this one up a little bit. So I'm going to come here to my deformations. I'm going to polish by group. And we'll go a little bit stronger. Just get a little more cleaning up through there. Yeah, like that. A little bit more something like that. Okay, then, maybe I'll do, I don't know, for giggles, let's do a slice circle and square, and let's put a circle. I don't want one there because we got the little circles up here. Let's do that. But let's make sure this circle is not 2 polygroups, right? So it's 2 polygroups because I sliced across this blue polygroup and this green polygroup. So when you do that, it's going to slice, right, and give me 2. I don't want that, okay? I just want to have 1. So I'm going to click on the vertex points where there's multiple ones in essence sharing and try and seeing about looking at, no, let's see, how did I look at it? Yeah, let's go with this. So I click on that vertex point for the 1, Control W, right? And then now that's its own polygroup. Okay? So what am I setting myself up here for? What I'm setting up for here is, if you remember, we made this brush, right? Then I'm going to go a lot smaller. Even more small. Oh, even more. Yeah, there you go. That's the size I'm looking for. Maybe we'll go size of 2. Yeah, 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 there. Okay, and so what I want to do is use the advantage of what I just did for me, which is having these polygroups. Okay, and I'm going to go up here to the stroke palette in the functions, and I'm going to tell ZBrush, frame the mesh only by the polygroups. Okay, so I turn off crease edging and borders. So I click this, and if you notice, if I turn off my polyframe, there's curves here going on. And I'm going to turn off symmetry because I don't need symmetry on. Right? And then now there's these curve elements that are being applied to the surface. Okay? And what I want to do now is use this brush that I have and go on the surface. So number one, I know my depth needs to change. So I'm going to put it at 0. And now I'm just going to tap on any curve. And now it's laying out where all those curves are. I'm getting, let's go a little bit bigger. Let's see what a brush size of 2 looks like. Yeah, there. Happy little trees. There, happy little trees. Right? And what this is doing, it's sitting inside the surface, right? Looks like I can go in a little bit. So let's go a negative, whoops. Let's go a negative 10. Right? And then tapping on this. Right? And click and then maybe smooth this out. Click and smooth that out. Right? So if you click and then hold the shift key, you can smooth things out here if you want to. So hold click and then hold the shift key. Okay? So now that I have this, right? This is an element that I can come down here and say, you know what? Let's split this unmasked portion. And what I'm left with are these cuts, these other cuts now, right? And then now, of course, if I turn this to subtractive, it's now being used as a subtract on the head, right? And then now you have the ability to play with this. How would you want it to play? Okay, so looking at that and then seeing what you can do with this. So it's just different ways of going about the approach about how I'm trying to get to the result. Okay, so unfortunately, I got to go here soon, but I saw one of the questions about, hey, how to do clearancing things for 3D printing. For me, you know, you're just using a key, right? So if I take like, let's take a cube. Let's make that a mesh, right? And let's go ahead and let's append a cylinder real quick. We'll bring that cylinder out. We'll shrink it down, right? Do this. Let's come into here. Let's even zmodeler this. Let's add a bevel here. So let's insert single edge. I'm going to do this. Delete that. So I got a bevel. Let's go even bigger with the bevel. And then I'll crease that, I'll crease that, I'll crease that as an example. So now I have this element coming through there. And then let's say, let's go to brush and let's add a cube and do a quick cube and something like that. And then we'll do this and I'll mask this portion off of it and we'll scale it down. Okay, I don't want this edge loop through here, right? So let's switch back to zmodeler. And I'll delete that edge loop right there. And I definitely want it creased. So let's get to my creasing and do something like that. Let's just say something like this so you guys can see the elements, the changes, right? So this is going to be a subtractive, right? So this is, in essence, your keying element, right, that maybe you're going to use on a collectible or whatever it's going to be, okay? So in order to have like some clearance in there, right, the easiest thing for me to do is obviously you're going to have a version that's the positive, like the male. So you have a male and a female, right? So let's just rename this pause for positive, and then let's just rename this negative for negative. Okay, and then this is, let's just rename this the base for the base. All right, and then this is all part of this group. Okay, and so all I normally do for all my prints, and it of course comes down to what you're trying to do, and this is all going to come down to, is this for something that's a toy that's 3 3/4 tall? Is this something for a collectible that's 18 inches tall? That's all relevant as well. Okay, but the easiest thing to do is going to my negative, and then I just come down in here to deformation, and in my inflate, I inflate it like once. And that gives a little bit of clearance for me to be able to use in there. So if that got inflated just enough that if we now look at, let's see if I can show you what's going on inside, right? There is a little gap in here. So let me turn this on to smooth, right? So there's going to be now a gap in here, okay, going on. So I'll turn that on to smooth. Here, maybe if I hide, oops, some of the cube for you guys. And let's turn double on. And let's turn double on for them as well. And turn on double from them. Okay. So inside here, there is a little bit of a gap there. So if I go back to this and go a little bit more extreme with this, you'll start getting more of a gap happening. So you can see that moved right there. So there's more of a gap going on in there. And because we're using live booleans, the visibility part's not going to really work here. So let's append. Here, let's append a cube. Turn that cube into subtractive. So there you go. So you see there's a little ring gap in there. So you see that gap right in there? That's from me doing the inflation, right? So one's male and one's female, right? So you can see along this whole thing, there's a little inner little gap happening through there. That's usually my go-to for what I do. I do a lot of collectibles or toy stuff. So that'll work for you. Okay, so I know I went a little all over the place today, but I kind of wanted to revamp this guy. I didn't get as far as I want because I really wanted to show how little I have done in his head. But my next approach now is start adding all the crazy details using these techniques now that I'm doing with the live boolean and just having the live boolean be a separate subtool, right? So again, I'm trying to just create a sci-fi guy here, right? So if we turn everything on, and turn on our shoulder pads and references, right? Blah, 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 blah. Again, because somebody was asking again, right? So this is kind of what I'm going for. Something like this. It's going to be some kind of sci-fi mech guy to come out of here. And I'm still at the beginning stages. Like I know someone said the shoulder pieces wouldn't work. They don't. You know, and I'm still figuring it out. I'm still at beginning stages of this guy. It's 2020. Let's hit the graveyard of models of something maybe that I want to fix. So unfortunately, I got to go here. But let me see if I can see any last minute questions. So unfortunately, I don't have time to answer the retopology, but I would use probably ZRemesher with and using the polygrouping. That's why my polygrouping is so important. Francis, I would use the polygrouping to help drive that for it. So any last minute questions before I call it a stream? Chainmail, unfortunately, I don't have the time. I got to unfortunately get out of here. I got a meeting I got to get to in 5 minutes. So I'm unfortunately out of time. But I'll stream again next month. If not, maybe again this month. I can definitely show the chainmail sculpt a moderator level, how to do that. It's pretty easy. I would use Nano is one of the greatest ways to do that. Nano mesh to do that. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. I don't even think my throat can even go much further. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you again. Keep an eye on the channel. Obviously, we got more streams going on. Next week, we got more Pixelogic staff. Okay. And then the week after that, I think next week is Joseph Dressed. I'm not sure again. I have to double check. So, but keep an eye on our schedule on our channel. We've got more Pixelogic staff members jumping on here and streaming on a weekly basis. And what's your map question? Go ahead, Bara. You got like a minute. What's your concerning maps question? If you want, you can send me an email about your maps question. And that way I can answer it. Let me type my email in there. Of course, you could just hit us up on support.pixelogic.com as well. But, oh, I'm not signed in. Dang the jokes, I'm not signed in there. I'm writing in the wrong one. Go figure, Paul. Wrong one. Boom. There you go. There's my email. Okay, so just throw the map question at me in an email. Okay, everyone, have a great rest of Jan. I can't believe we're already halfway through January of 2020. It's insane how fast time flies. So I don't know. Looking at this guy again, I might want to finish this guy off. I'm kind of digging him, and I really want to play with the design more. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be having further along the next time I stream, and I can show you where I'm at, and maybe have the head finished. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of January. Again, keep an eye on the schedule. We got a lot more streamers coming up. Have a great day. Great day. I'm on my way out. See ya!